Welcome to the Vilest Rag, a podcast hosted by the Ubyssey student newspaper. I'm Elena Massing, the Ubyssey's features editor, and I'm one of your hosts for today. And who are you?
Hi, my name's Aisha Chaudhry. I'm the editor-in-chief at the Ubyssey, and I'll be joining Elena and doing the little intro today.
Yay! I haven't had someone here for so long. I've been so lonely. I've truly been yapping about nothing. Yeah, you usually do them with me. Caleb did one at some point, I think. Yeah. Caleb was going to do one again, but he's not here, I fear. He may be in Calgary already, low-key. No.
I thought he was staying here for the break. Well, whatever.
I don't know anything about... No, he's not. He's not staying. Well, anyways, now that we've completely revealed all of Caleb's travel plans...
True. Had him down.
I thought that because this is the last podcast episode of the year, it would be a good opportunity to reflect on everything that's happened in 2025.
True. It's been a weird year.
Why has it been a weird year?
Many things changed. I took on a new position at the paper. I did news for 2 years and then doing EIC. I'm the boss. We made a lot of changes. Like how we train people. We made that whole Ubyssey Reloaded report. There's the office renovations that is causing me such a headache currently. I need an electrician. I don't know anything about the wires. Talking to furniture people. But yeah, how was your year?
My year was it was kind of a nothing year. Like, I feel like it's just kind of the same. Like,
really?
I don't know. Like, what happened? School has been kind of the same. I switched my programs.
Yeah, that's huge.
I was in a different music program, and now I'm in the music program that I am now. And it's, like, essentially the same. But I think I find some comfort in knowing that I finally have a major, and I will probably keep this one for the rest of my degree.
Only took you 4 years.
Yeah, only took 4 years to figure out how to consistently go to class.
And that's okay.
So, there you go. Not that I am...
You have 8:30 classes next term. I know you're not going to go consistently.
But I have to is the thing, because I don't know what is happening in those classes. Like, they're my hardest ones, and it's not going to be good. But Ubyssey-wise, we started this podcast.
Oh, true.
Which was cool.
Forgot.
So that's been taking up a lot of my time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm okay with how it's gone so far.
Yeah.
Not to be candid on Maine. But oh, okay. So you hate the microphones.
Sorry, let me just beat up the microphones and screw over the podcast editors.
But I think this term was a good opportunity to kind of figure out the structure of it, where we kind of want to go, figure out some technical difficulties that may still continue, like that weird, like, sound the mics make sometimes.
You live and you learn.
Student journalism, so we can get better microphones, maybe. These ones aren't that bad. But also figuring out the direction of the podcast going forward. Yeah. Because our editor interviews wrap up not this year like I thought they would, but in the second week of January. Huge. Whenever we release the very last one, which is Ayla's. And sometime in Caleb's podcast or interview today, I say that the next episode is next week, but that's a lie. It's not. It is not, in fact, next week. It will be in January. But then after that, we're doing new things. Mm-hmm. We're talking to other people outside of the Ubyssey, which was kind of always the main goal. Yeah. It's good to get to know the people here, but I'm excited to have other people on the podcast and figure out how to make that happen logistically.
That'll be fun. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. Very excited for what the future holds. Mm-hmm. What are you proud of at the Ubyssey this year? I know you said some things already, but
I hate questions like that. Not actually. Let me
The whole point is to reflect right now. Like, what do you want me to say?
I think we've made a lot of changes that will help people in the long run, even if the completion of these goals won't be till the end of the year. Like training people or getting a like better layout of the newsroom, or how like multimedia, like investing in that again, because we really fell off with different types of media and even our social media. So I think those are all things I'm proud of that aren't just gonna like end with this editorial, but will hopefully continue forward. Yeah, so I don't know, it's like a good start, I think, because I think for a long time we were a bit static. Not to say I didn't like our reporting before, or I'm not proud of past editorials, but I felt like we didn't change that much. But yeah, what are you proud of?
Well, I guess I'm proud of this.
True,
but
this
also,
is huge. Yeah,
I think within my section I've been trying to slowly shift the writing style away from what it was before. I think I probably talked about this in my own episode of the podcast, but we had a very like sort of standard like news article format approach to features writing, which I don't think is necessarily right for what this format actually needs. So I've been trying to get people to go into a bit more depth and use their creative voice a bit more.
Yeah.
Not in like the creative nonfiction way, like we don't do personal essays,
like
that
narratives,
sort of thing. But yeah, like narrative in reported pieces. So I think that's been going well. Yeah, it's been going well.
I've liked the
it's
pieces.
Been a bit hard to make that change, and we've been moving a bit slowly, but I think it's going to happen, and I think it's going to be kind of worthwhile. Also wrote the features handbook, which
huge.
Didn't really exist before. So I think that's helped with training and guiding people in the right direction.
Yeah, big undertaking. So,
yeah. What are you looking forward to in this upcoming term?
Honestly, I'm just looking forward to not having so much to do next term, like with school, so that I can kind of just focus on Ubyssey and like enjoying my last term before I graduate, because I was like doing my honors thesis this term and like applying to graduate schools, and I think that took like years off my life. But I don't have to do that next term. I'm only taking 2 courses, so I'm just looking forward to having a more chill semester. And also, not to be like a governance nerd, but it's also AMS elections, and I always love that time of year because I don't know, the student politicians be fighting. Not actually, but also sometimes. I mean, there's debates, but I don't know. I just think it's fun to see what people are campaigning on and who wins, and like what the future of the student union will look like in next year, even if I'm not around. Yeah, I don't know. What?
What?
No, nothing. What are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? I mean, more immediately, we're working on some more video stuff for the end of December / very beginning of January, with this seasonal piece that I'm not going to reveal too many details about.
I don't even know what this piece is.
I've told you about it. I think you're just forgetting right now.
I'm sorry.
But that's gonna come out, I guess, somewhere around New Year's, which will be a fun time to be working, but it'll be worth it. It'll be a fun piece. And I'm hoping we can do more like video stuff going forward, because obviously we do this, but it's like not really the same as doing like multimedia elements to incorporate into like written reporting.
Yeah. So we need to get a tiny mic.
We'll see. Tiny mic. I think we have a tiny mic.
We do have a tiny. We need to get people running around this campus.
Yeah. Yeah, true. More streeters. Bring back streeters.
I actually don't know how people do streeters. I hate going up to people and talking to them.
Well, you'll learn.
I'm not
when I make you start.
Absolutely not.
But before we get into the rest of this podcast, perhaps we can go through what we've published this week.
True.
Stories people can go check out.
Okay, yeah. Let me take it from the top with news. We have a piece. The university has little to say after pre-exam divestment protests halts traffic and transit. This was written by Spencer Eisen, myself, with photos by Sydney Shaw. This was a protest that happened at the intersection of Westbrook and University Boulevard. It lasted about 3 hours, halted a lot of traffic. The protesters were calling on Ubyssey to divest from companies they say are complicit with Palestinian human rights abuses. It was the second last day of classes, very hectic time on campus, and there was just a lot going on. So, interesting piece to check out. I was very, very cold and wet afterwards because it was pouring rain, which was a whole other thing in the office. But yeah.
What do you mean by a whole other thing?
I just like spent the rest of the day in the office with like fuzzy Christmas socks on and like no shoes because my shoes were also wet. And then later we saw a mouse in the office and I was like, great, this is a fantastic day. But yeah, and then the second next piece from news is governors approve tuition increase for next year by Spencer Eisen and Stephen Koser. They approved the tuition increase 2% for domestic students and 2 to 4% for international students, as they do literally every year. So I don't even know if there's much to say about that.
There you go.
Yeah.
In features, we have a profile on Emily Tang, which was written by myself with photos by Mavelyn View. Emily Tang is the Graduate Student Society president, and this profile talks actually not that much about the GSS. It's mostly about her research in sexual health, her stand-up comedy passion.
She sounds like a cool guy.
She is a cool guy. Yeah. So take a look at that if you want. In arts and culture, Jad Kajus, everyone says I look like my mother, melds tradition and technology at the MOA. So that's the Museum of Anthropology's newest exhibit, with a piece by Natalie Vauquelin with photos by Zoe Wagner. And in the room is a cautionary tale well told by Claire Donnan, which details the stories of 5 Afghan women, each with their own experiences living under the rule of the Taliban. And 12 Days of Completely Secular Yuletide, a series that happens every year, though not actually for 12 days. But those are personal essays, reviews about vaguely holiday seasonal movies by the arts and culture writers. There are 2 of those already out, but I believe there are more to come, at least from what I know.
Yeah.
And in sports and recreation, the Ubyssey sports team's end-of-term report by the Ubyssey sports staff. So Caleb and all of the sports writers talk about their beats and reflect on team performances throughout the year. So that's an interesting piece to take a look at. And I believe we talk about it in the interview that's coming up when I talk to Caleb. So what else have we got?
Yeah, from research, we have the inaugural Black Graduate Spotlight Initiative Symposium Connects Black Focus Research to Community by Sophia Samilsky. The symposium was held for 6 award recipients to share their work with members of the UBC community and spotlight the work of Black scholarship, so definitely go check that out. And then from humor, we have Oswald Flan is campus's most illustrious academic maxer by Gabby Renew with illustrations by Iliora Kwachi. So a silly piece about how to do great in your finals. I mean, it's kind of the end of final seasons, but take a look for next term if you were struggling.
I still have finals. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 3 more days, but
Saturday finals are actually like this needs to be outlawed.
8:30 finals should also be outlawed, but
there
we
go.
Are.
And you can read all of these pieces and more at our website, ubyssey.ca, which is updated daily most of the time, but over the holidays, probably not daily. So
no.
don't expect daily pieces. But in this episode of the Vilest Rag, I have another conversation with a member of our editorial board, one of the last ones. And this week I spoke with Caleb Peterson, our sports and recreation editor. And you can stay tuned after that to learn about the Social Justice Center, explained by columnist Quyen Schroeder. So that's all from me and Aisha for now.
Yeah, for the year.
For the year. So we'll see you in 2026.
True. Yeah.
Whoa.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Boop, 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 boop.
And we'll be back again after a short break. Caleb Peterson is the Ubyssey Sports and Rec editor, and he's joining me today to talk about sports.
Yeah.
Yay! How many rounds have there been now? We collectively hold the record for second longest Vilest Rag episode ever. We were beat
Second
out.
longest.
Second longest. Ours was like 108.
Fucking Spencer.
Where you interviewed me. Yeah, it was in fact Spencer. And that's the episode that made it so we couldn't see Nuremberg. But I have no movie plans today.
Let's go.
Only interview plans, which are arguably more important. But
interview plans.
I've made sure to provide a gap.
Okay. So how much of a gap are we working with?
It's like at like 4:15, 4:30. We're good. We could talk for hours.
Fantastic. In theory, the goal should be to beat Spencer.
Yes. Like,
who is he to hold that record? I think that's ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah. So we got to do at least like an hour and a half.
I think you're aiming low. I think we can push right up against that 4:30 deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Make it longer than the Nuremberg movie to represent you.
Okay. Yeah.
Missing Nuremberg.
To represent all that was lost.
Exactly.
And on things that were lost. Yeah, our podcast got wiped. Yeah, we recorded this episode a long time ago and then it got deleted in the great SD card reformatting of 2025. Which actually poses some problems because in my podcast, which we recorded after the first initial podcast, we referenced things that had happened in that podcast.
Multiple times.
Yeah. So do I remember what they are? No. Will there be inconsistencies? Yes. So there's information that just is like out in the ether now, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll move past that.
So the second longest podcast episode then could have been even longer because a lot of times we were like, "Wait, we can't talk about this because it'll be in the other podcast," and then that didn't happen.
So we technically could have beat Spencer, but we were holding back. Yeah. So now it's time.
Now we're gonna let
make
loose
up for everything that was lost and more. But let's talk about you at Ubyssey, not Ubyssey. Ubyssey.
Whoa, that's wild.
What year are you in? What are you studying? What's your deal?
Hard-hitting questions. Okay, I am a fourth year media studies student at Ubyssey. What's my deal? I don't know. Generally, I do media studies. I do Ubyssey. I went into media studies because I kind of didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And it's a good degree for that because you kind of do a bunch of random ass things. Like I just finished a comp sci course, which was hell and horrible. But I also do, like, there's also journalism courses, which, you know, makes more sense with what I'm doing here. There's also art history. There's also film production. There's a million different things. So it's a unique degree in that way. And kind of being able to try a bunch of things and find out what you want to do, which was cool for me. But yeah, now I am almost done that, which is scary and weird and not fun. So, yeah.
What is the end goal?
That's a fantastic question.
What do most people in media studies end up going into?
Nobody knows. Everybody is doing something different. Like I have a friend who is very into like the film side of things. He currently works on a lot of film sets. I think he was actually to give like a shout out for the Ubyssey's photo issue. I think he was interviewed for that. His name is Ryan. It's a very cool piece called The Annotated Scream, so you can hear from him in that. But that's an example of something that someone in media studies might want to do because there's a lot of film elements of it, but obviously like I'm so terrible at that. He would help me with so many of my film projects and make them look like 1,000 times better than they actually are.
Is he the friend who filmed you running into the ocean?
Yes.
I'm making connections.
I know, look at that.
It's
look
all
at that.
coming together.
And there's one of the things from the other podcast that we're looping it all back in. Yes, he is the friend who filmed me walking into the ocean in the middle of December last year. We're probably reaching the 1 year anniversary of that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Is it going to happen again?
No, dear God, no. I stopped making stupid predictions and stupid bets from then on. I learned my lesson.
That's probably for the best.
Probably. It did look very cool, though. It was the most cinematic I've ever been, which is a little bit disappointing that I haven't been in anything better. But, you know, it looked cool. It was very cool.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Ubyssey. You're the sports and rec editor.
Ubyssey.
What's that?
Not Ubyssey.
Not Ubyssey.
Hard shift.
Not to be confused with Ubyssey.
Okay. Ubyssey? Question mark? Okay.
Sports editor.
Oh, yes.
What does that mean?
Oh, right. That's what I do.
what is the sport? What is being the sports editor? What is that? What does the sports editor do? Fantastic.
I actually have no like full questions prepared. They're all just like one like
vaguely
prompts.
gesturing. Ubyssey. Okay. Football. Football sucked this year. Anyway. That's one of the things we talk about was football. Mm-hmm. What the sports and rec section does, it is somewhat obvious because of the title, is that we cover sports. But we don't just cover all the varsity sports on campus, although this semester we kind of just did that. But we cover varsity sports. We cover kind of more vaguely the Thunderbird sports clubs. For people who don't know, the separation between, God, this is a tangent and a half, but there's the Thunderbirds, which are the varsity level. Then there's the TSCs, which are sports that aren't quite varsity, but they still play under the Thunderbirds team logo. The varsity teams get funding from the school, TSCs don't. We also cover like more casual sport on campus, which fits into more of like the recreation side. So we've published articles on like the climbing wall in the past, and we've done stuff about like intramurals. I've written an article about that. So it kind of covers the whole like scope of it, mainly covering varsity athletics though, because obviously that's kind of what people associate with sports on campus. It's usually the most newsworthy. So we will, for varsity sports, we'll do what were previously kind of termed as recaps. That might be changing in the future, because we've kind of taken recaps away from previously what a sports recap would be you go to the game, you watch what happens, and then you just kind of like very quickly in like a very short 500 word package, you just kind of say what happened. We've tried to move away from that a little bit this year, to kind of go from just talking about, hey, this happened and this happened and this happened, to, well, here's what happened and why did it matter. So it's a little bit more analytical with our coverage of it. And so that's kind of this semester particularly, it's been the main thing that we've done, because it's represented a really large shift from what we've done with covering sports in the past. It was very much always like quick recaps, get them up quickly, even though they wouldn't always go up quickly, but just like kind of right off the bat. But especially since like as a student newspaper, it's a lot harder to get things out right on the buzzer, right as the game ends. And then if you're publishing a recap that doesn't really say much beyond what happened, people can find that information very easily in other places, often in greater detail. So that's why we've instead tried to shift to be more analytical and show why things matter. And I think that provides kind of, the hope is to provide a little bit more of an insight into those sports than can be found in other places, because Ubyssey produces their own stuff, their own kind of articles on the game, and those are kind of a little more recap-y. So we're trying to move away from that and kind of differentiate ourselves in that way. And so we have reporters on our team who cover one sport all year, which is also different from what we've done in the past. And they'll go to, according to their capacity, pretty much every single game that they can throughout a year, and they'll kind of build up that knowledge on the team and then become kind of the foremost expert, let's say, on like, for like Annalise, one of our senior staff is with football. Maya, another one of our senior staff, did women's soccer, is now doing women's basketball. So that's kind of the main thing that we focused on this year. We do a bunch of other things. We kind of, because our main focus is just sports, we kind of do it in a bunch of different forms. We've mostly done these kind of like recap analysis pieces, and now second semester, I'm hoping to do kind of more profiles of athletes, kind of some more feature-y stuff. We did one on, Maya wrote one on a couple rugby players who went to the World Cup. We're hoping to do more of those next term, potentially writing some columns, more opinion-based pieces. It's a lot that goes on in sports. I think that we're a cool section, but I'm a little biased, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not super knowledgeable in any given sport.
Except ringette.
And even then, it's kind of pushing it. But I would read recaps, and I would be like, I'm a little confused about the terminology and all the like different plays that are happening. I don't really know what's happening, but like, I'm happy to be here. But I appreciate now, I think it's probably largely because you have people working more on like a very specific beat, that there's more, like you said, like analysis and more talking about like standout players, like the relationships between these players and between games. So I think it's very interesting, even from someone who isn't following these sports and doesn't really have that same attachment to it. I'm like, this is a fun story to read regardless.
Yeah.
And I really liked, I don't think it's out yet, but I think it will be out by the time that this is out. But the thing you literally just put in copy edits
yes.
about like the your whole like sports team doing like a year or term end recap, but I thought that was really cool, and having people sort of reflect back on that. And I think the having people assigned to specific beats thing is really working out for you.
Yeah, that article in particular was kind of the moment. It was our last, we have like our section meetings that every section will have, and we have ours Wednesdays. We had our last one at the start of this month, and that's when we like wrote that. It was more like the audio recorder was on and people kind of talked around the room. That I think was the moment where it kind of clicked for me. It was like, okay, yeah, this is like sustainable. Because it was just like everybody has kind of built up that knowledge over the 4 months, because previously the way that it would work is that you would just kind of like, the pitch list would come out through the email. If you're a Ubyssey fan, you may have seen the pitch list before. Those would come out through the email, and then it would be like, previous sports editors would kind of just like put them in a list and say like, okay, these are the games going on this week. First one to respond to the email gets it. So you would have to kind of like fight and claw for that, and it would usually be different people doing it every week. But now that we've had people assigned to the beats, they are able to do kind of consistently throughout the year. And with that year-end article where he did it, I just even like seeing people talk about it and hearing kind of their insights into it. And just like going around the room, seeing people's like eyes light up when they're able to talk about the sport that they've been covering all year, I was like, yeah, this is kind of what the goal was. And I think that piece is awesome. And I think it kind of provides a lot more insights into the teams than I think the Ubyssey has had, previously, because we just didn't have the ability to, like, people weren't able to, have that knowledge because they didn't know what was happening. Like you talk about like talking about players and the different connections between them. You don't necessarily, like, especially for a sport, like I covered football a lot. If I, like in my first couple of football games, you don't know, even though like I've been watching football since I was like 8 years old, but I can't go into a football game and immediately kind of get to know the whole team in like 3 hours. Whereas if I've been to every game and I kind of see like standout players, you start to notice patterns, you start to notice things. That's when things kind of build to that point. And so, yeah, like that's something that's been able to kind of come together because of those beats, like focusing on the players more, because you just don't know. It's like, who's number 37, right? Like who knows? So yeah, that part of it I think has been huge, and something that I've told a lot of my writers, like especially when I've gone out to people's like first games with them, and I've told them like, yeah, this one will be the worst one you ever write. Like I'm so sorry, but this one will be the worst one. But it's because you kind of build on that as you go, and I think that's something that's been super awesome to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you end up at the Ubyssey, and more specifically in sports and rec?
Great question.
We talked about your roots in culture briefly.
Yes. I am a culture writer at heart. No, I at least to some extent. I think if there were no sports section at the Ubyssey, I would be a culture writer. I would be a culture guy, but because that was how I started. The way that I started was more so just like I knew vaguely of the Ubyssey's existence, because in if you've ever done Jumpstart, what a time to be alive, where you kind of like come to Ubyssey before everybody if you're socially anxious and nervous about everything. It's like a cheat code to meeting new people and whatnot. At least that's how they advertise it.
Did it work?
What's that?
Did it work?
Yeah, I would say it worked. That's where I met Ryan, was at Jumpstart. So yes, I do think it worked. For like $1,000 or whatever it was we had to pay for that.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. But it was useful in that I met a bunch of people who are still friends to this day. And I first learned about the Ubyssey because our Jumpstart like orientation leader wrote for the Ubyssey, and she talked a lot about it. So I came into university, again, not really knowing what I was doing or what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to write in some capacity. And so, well, I wasn't maybe going into it being like, journalism is the path for me for sure. It was like, okay, I want to write and I want to do something with it. Like I did English AP in high school, and that was my favorite class. So hearing about that, and then knowing like, oh, the Ubyssey journalism student newspaper, they probably have a sports section. I'd love to cover sports because I'm a big sports guy, if you didn't know from everything about me. Whoa, this is wild. This is crazy. But yeah, so like I saw that and I was like, okay, this would be a cool opportunity. The issue with me is that this office was intimidating and I didn't want to talk to anybody. Yeah, it was rough. But so I just signed up for the pitch list all in secret. And eventually when something came out that was like, oh, this is exciting, I responded to it and picked that up. And that was a culture piece. It was not a sports piece initially, but it was a culture piece with a very high kind of sports connection, because it was a review of a film at VIF, The Grizzly Truth, which is a documentary chronicling why the Vancouver Grizzlies left the city. Awesome documentary. Very positive thoughts from me on that. It was a very cool experience. It was kind of like, that's when it first connected to me, like, oh man, like this is kind of what I want to do. I was such a nerd, and I went out and like bought a Grizzlies hat before I went to this premiere. So I had the Grizzlies hat on in the theater, and I went and I watched it, and it was awesome. And went back and wrote the piece the same night. And I was just like, wow, this is like I'm like 3 weeks in, but I was like, this is the coolest thing I've done so far. And so I kind of kept it up from there. Eventually started writing for sports, eventually started covering football, had some awesome experiences with that. Covered another cool one was covering the Shrum Bowl, which is a rivalry game that is now dead. SFU killed it because they killed their football team, but it was SFU Ubyssey. They used to play every year. SFU screwed off to go play in the States with the NCAA, but they came back, played a game against Ubyssey, and then immediately SFU said no more football team for you. But it was a very cool event. I drove up to Burnaby to watch that. And it was just like those kind of experiences in my first year solidified. Like, even though I probably only wrote like 5 things, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, this is very much what I want to do for the rest of my time here. So yeah, from there I just kind of kept writing more and doing one-off things until eventually somehow I ended up here. Who knows the rest of the way.
Do you think journalism will be something you try to do post Ubyssey also?
I mean, maybe. Like, I feel like a lot of people in here, that's maybe not their goal, because it's just like a hard field to break
absolutely.
into. Yeah, as everybody in here kind of has had to wrestle with. I think ideally, yes. I think with sports journalism, it's tricky too, because like if I'm to go out and become like a beat writer for a team, it's hard for a couple reasons. Because there are very few positions like that. Like if you're to do it at a high level where you're probably able to make it a sustainable career, like there's not that many jobs, there's only so many teams, and there's only so many positions. The other thing is that immediately that's kind of a huge travel burden. Like with UBC, where it's good because we're like very situated, you go to all the games on campus, you don't necessarily have to leave. But like in a real world scenario, like if I was covering like the Seahawks, like I would have to like fly across the country every single time I wanted to cover a game. So that's difficult. And then just the fact that like journalism's future is kind of, you know, like who knows what will happen with that. I hope positive things, but who knows. So ideally, yes, but it's the kind of thing where I feel like I'm probably not alone in this, where it's like, yes, that is the goal theoretically, but you have backup plans and you have backup options in case that does not work out, which is kind of depressing. But, you know, it is what it is, I suppose.
If it were to happen, is there like a dream publication or outlet
yeah,
you would like to work
for?
for?
Absolutely. I have a guy whose job I want to take. No, I love his writing, but the dream job is beat writer for the Seahawks for The Athletic. That's the top job. Michael Sean Dugar, I'm coming for you. No,
I'm sure he's watching this.
I'm sure he's watching this. He's locked the fuck in on me. Yeah. No, he is an awesome writer. He's been covering the Seahawks for like 10 years, and I've especially like in the last few years I've read like every single one of his articles. But it's like just such a cool job. Like he's around the team every single day. And like if you couldn't tell, that's my favorite football team and just team in general. So that would be kind of the dream. And The Athletic is the gold standard for sports journalism. So that would definitely be up there in terms of jobs. Will I ever be in that position? Probably not. Probably no. But you know, like maybe I'll win the theoretical job lottery out there. So who knows?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting the sense that football and specifically the Seahawks are your main thing. So how did that happen? You have an essay on this also,
I do have an essay on this.
For the listeners.
Yeah, don't listen to me. Go read that. No, it's with the Seahawks, my fandom for it kind of started when I was like 8 years old or whatever. And I initially did not like football. Shocker, plot twist. But I initially was more of a...
You?
I know. I'm a betrayal to myself. Initially I was more of a hockey guy, as like most like Canadians who are into sports are. Big Flames fan growing up in Calgary. And my dad would watch football, and I never really got it. Because I think with football specifically, when you first get into it, it's very intimidating because it's a lot more complicated on a surface level than most other sports are. Hockey, it's like very clear, you shoot the puck into the net, you score the goal. Football, what the hell is happening? You could score by getting it in the end zone. You can also score it by kicking it through the yellow posts. You can also score by throwing the other team back into their own end zone. There's a million different ways you can do that. In the CFL, you can score by kicking the ball through the end zone. There's a lot. So it's a lot more kind of complicated at a surface level, and as like a 7 or 8 year old, I was like, this is boring. This is dreadful. I hate this. Especially because my mom was like, yeah, this is boring. This is dreadful, and I hate this. You're right. But eventually I got to a point where I was watching with my dad. I very distinctly remember the 2012 divisional playoffs against Seahawks versus the Atlanta Falcons. And that was I didn't really know it at the time, but it was a great game. Kind of went down to the wire and the Seahawks lost, but there was just kind of like something about it and kind of the tension in the air that I was like, okay, like I might try this out. And so I started watching their games the next season, and that was the season, for football fans out there, where the Legion of Boom, Seattle's famed defense, kind of came into form. They had an excellent regular season. They swept through the playoffs, beat the stupid ass Niners in the NFC Championship, and then won the Super Bowl 43-8. And that kind of solidified it. Like, obviously my first season they win the Super Bowl, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm so happy, and I'm never gonna, like, this is the peak of the world. I'm never gonna experience any hardships from there. That was a lie, but I've been kind of hooked ever since. And yeah, they're an awesome team. Not that I'm biased or anything, but yeah, I've been lucky because they've been kind of successful my entire life, more or less. They've had just some awesome players, often awesome defense kind of throughout. Yeah, it's just like I can't kind of imagine what my life would kind of be if I didn't have that. And I know, like, to some people, like, especially people who don't know football, like, that sounds kind of stupid. And that's kind of what I wrote about in that piece, where it's like a lot of people don't necessarily understand like how intense I am about it. But it's really important to me, and it's kind of like no matter kind of what is going on in my life, like especially with university, like at this time of year, where it's like everything sucks and we're in hell because it's November and everything is due and finals and whatnot. It's like no matter what is happening, I will still have every single Sunday at this time of year a Seahawks game to watch, and it's like that's kind of enough for me. And yeah, that's kind of where that's a long-winded answer to your question, as most of mine have been. But yeah,
I think like it's a bit different. It's not in like a sports context. It's more an arts and culture context, because I feel like this kind of happens in the same way, where I was so intensely a fan of a lot of things growing up, and people simply did not understand that. Like, I also have a personal essay, actually not quite personal essay. It's like I talked to a prof in it, but it's vaguely personal essay about the Eras tour.
Oh, yeah, I read this one. Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of a similar vibe of like arts and sports, I think, are in the same way, where it's so like specialized and you have to know so much about these super specific things that no one else would care about to actually be a decent reporter.
Yep.
So I think that's interesting, an interesting connection.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, like, I feel like the overlap between like arts and culture and sports is like a lot more than people think.
It's
honestly
quite prominent.
Like, you wouldn't think, because the subject matter is so different, and I feel like the kind of audience for both is often different. But yeah, like as somebody who more like dabbles in that kind of space than, like I am in sports, like I do feel like the kind of approach is very similar. Like, I'm a fan of the Seahawks in the same way I'm a fan of like Kendrick Lamar. Like it's a similar kind of thing, right? Which is cool, and that's kind of why I say, like, if I wasn't a sports guy, I feel like I would be like a culture guy. It's the kind of yeah, like you said, like the specialized knowledge of it, and you can like really dig deep into it. Like, that's awesome. Like, it's so cool to be able to really get like that intensely invested in something.
Yeah, and I'm not culture anymore, but my desk and all the stuff that was on my desk has remained the same.
R.I.P. the desk.
Your desk was a lot nicer than mine, but we both had a lot of stuff that had kind of just accumulated, vaguely related to arts and culture and sports related things.
Yes.
And people would see your desk and they'd be like, wow, that's so awesome and whimsical. And we hate that you have to dull your sparkle because of the office renovations. But for the listeners, do you want to paint an image of what your desk looked like?
I can also, like, I took photos of my desk, so I can like send it away, but we can
put it on the
throw
screen,
it up
maybe?
on the screen. Sorry, dude.
For
I
all
don't know
the
who's ever
video
editing
watchers.
it. Yeah, for all the sorry, you stupid audio listeners. Me, of which I am one. But yeah, so my desk, it is Aisha and Spencer's fault for making me get rid of it. I'm going to put them on blast for that. Stupid.
Terrible bosses.
Terrible. No, it's I see the vision, but I had to get rid of all the stuff on my desk, and what it was is I came in at the start of this year, and it coincided very well with like growing up, my room was very like sports themed, you know, as you might expect, and I had kind of accumulated a lot of sports merchandise over the years. Because I like to spend ungodly amounts of money on that kind of thing, when I probably shouldn't. So I'd collected that over the years. I also had some stuff from my dad, who was also a big sports fan growing up. He had like collections of like a lot of the like pennants you would see on my desk. A lot of those are from him. Like there was one part where it had like all the different like major 4 sports leagues, like NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB. Those are from my dad. But I collected that stuff from him. I collected some stuff just from my own kind of thing. And then I had that all in my room at my home in Calgary. And then I went back to Calgary and we moved from my childhood home of like 20 years that I lived in my whole life. And as we were packing up the stuff, it was like, okay, so this stuff is probably, while the new house is being built, all of this stuff will probably just go in storage, which is lame and dumb. And so I said, why don't I buy an extra suitcase on the flight back, shove like all of that stuff in here and bring it to decorate my sports desk, because otherwise it is boring and lame without all of that stuff. Like I worked an 8-month co-op job at C-SPAN, a company in North Vancouver, and I had like a cubicle like desk thing like that, and my desk was stupid and boring and awful, and I was there for 8 months.
Boat memorabilia?
I didn't have boat memorabilia. Ship. Let's get it clear. C-SPAN, yeah, we build ships,
right,
multi-billion-dollar ships for the Canadian government. C-SPAN proud. But
sorry. I like choked on my spit a little bit at the same time. And yeah, sorry. Please continue.
Yeah. Anyway, C-SPAN proud. No, I didn't have any boat memorabilia because the one piece of I did have a lot of memorabilia from C-SPAN, but it was a lot of like socks. They were big into socks, and the stuff that I did have that was kind of deskable was like they had like a little mini Lego ship, a model of one of the ships they were building, and I took that home. So I didn't really have anything. So it was boring and lame, and I was like, I have learned from my mistakes, and I'm not going to do that again. So brought everything from Calgary, brought it here, and just like one random night at like the end of August, start of September, I came into the office after hours when nobody was here, and I just set it all up, and then boom, there it was. And yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff. It's a lot of kind of things I've gathered. There's the pennants, there's the multiple standings boards. I have a NFL helmet standings board that I would update. There's a little magnet NHL one. I have an autographed Jerome McGinley Frisbee that my dad caught when we went to a game when I was 5 years old. That's awesome. A bunch of Seahawks stuff. Yeah, it's cool. Perhaps I only think it's cool, but again, that's kind of the point.
I think it's cool. And now that it's all taken down and no one can rob you, what's the estimated value of everything that was at your desk?
I don't know.
If you don't mind me
asking.
Okay.
How like some of it is hopefully gonna stay. I don't want to like get rid of all of it. The estimated value, I don't really know. Like some of this stuff, like the standings boards and the pennants, like the pennants might have value because they're old. But like otherwise, like they're not even really like, some of the pennants my dad has are like from like CFL teams that don't exist anymore, and I think those are probably more valuable. Like the Las Vegas Posse and the there's so many, like the God, I'm such a nerd. The CFL had like a weird phase where they like brought in a bunch of American teams and they have awesome stupid names and stupid logos. Look them up. Anyway, like there's a bunch of those are probably more valuable, but in terms of the stuff that's there, the only kind of like valuable stuff would be stuff like the autograph frisbee. Like I bet that could kind of fetch a fair amount, because I mean, like Jerome McGinley, if you don't know, Hall of Fame hockey player, and so that would probably get you a decent price. But the other stuff, it's like, yeah, it would be valuable, but it's not like collector's edition stuff. I don't have that kind of money. I'm not the kind of guy. I'm the kind of guy who looks at the stuff to say like, wow, that's a $600 autographed helmet. I want that. But then I would not get it because that would bankrupt me, unfortunately. So like overall value, like it's like a few $100 probably, but it's nothing like crazy yet.
Just doesn't really align with working in journalism.
No, it does not. It does not, unfortunately. Yeah, I gotta get a side hustle of some kind.
Yeah. Your jersey collection like astounds me though. I don't know, maybe they're all the same ones, and I'm bad at telling them apart. But I've never bought a jersey before besides like actual ones for playing and whatever. But I have been getting really into the PWHL.
You gonna get a Golden Eyes jersey?
No. I think they're ugly. I think they're ugly, and I don't like the logo.
No, you don't like the Golden Eyes logo?
No, because
that's ridiculous. For this,
maybe. But what is a golden eye?
It's a duck. It's a duck.
But then why are there no ducks?
Because that's lame and stupid. Like, okay. Yes, it is. The logo is so cool. The logo of the Golden Eyes is so cool. I really like it. It's awesome, like, both on the jerseys, but it's especially cool at center ice, which is awesome because the Golden Eyes are the only PWHL team to have their logo at center ice, because all the other ones like rent it from another place.
Yeah.
I think their logo and color scheme is awesome.
I'm not into it.
Okay, what PWHL jersey are you going to get then?
I was going to get one of the Marie-Philippe Poulin jerseys.
Okay.
Because I am a Victoire fan. I bought tickets to see the game that's here on December 20th, I think. And it's Vancouver versus Montreal. And I was like, I know for a fact Vancouver is going to lose this, because how do you beat Victoire? But I was like, I need to see this. I need to see this happen. Yeah. So I'm very excited for that. Okay. But I was going to buy this jersey, and it was like $275.
Yes. Jerseys are very expensive.
I promptly closed the tab. I was like, I can't do this.
That's
I'm not
so worth it, though.
Into the whole bit.
But that's like it's so worth it. That would be such a great purchase. Like, okay. I don't see your point that the Golden Eyes jerseys are bad. Because the logo is awesome and the color scheme is awesome. However,
I like the temporary Vancouver ones.
Oh,
kind of fun.
Don't even fucking get me started with that shit. Okay. I understand it from a perspective that the PWHL, like they're moving quickly, they're building quickly, they needed to have those temporary. I
don't really understand why they happened. But I think I like them better than the actual jerseys. I
don't understand. Okay, I understand why they happened for the original 6 teams, because it was like they got up so quickly. I don't know why they needed that for Vancouver and Seattle. They're like, oh, it pays like homage to the original 6. That's bullshit. Anyway, I hate hockey jerseys in general that do the diagonal letters thing like the PWHL does. I hate them.
It's kind of fun.
It is not fun. It is ugly. And it's so boring because it's like, oh, it's nostalgic, it's vintage, whatever. Oh my God, we're the New York Rangers. Look at us, we're so different. No, it just looks bad. And you have a better jersey that you can just use. Carolina in the NHL does the same thing. where it's like, oh, look at us, we put diagonal letters on a jersey. Stop. You're not original, you're not cool, you're not fun. Put the goddamn logo on the jersey and it will be so much better.
When I figure out how to use Canva, like, put the text on a stand.
Yeah, like, honestly, I think that might be what it is. I'm also going to a Golden Knights game. I think I'm going to the one right before the Montreal one. I'm going on the 16th against Ottawa. And I was like, okay, yeah, do I drop that amount of money on a jersey? Because, I've made that choice before. And I would. But I'm not going to buy a Golden Knights jersey until next year when they actually make the real jerseys and they throw out these garbage ones. That's my plan. But anyway, like, I do think Montreal would be a good choice because, like, if you are a fan, like, I don't understand that because why are you cheering for them when you're in Vancouver? But I do think that the Montreal jerseys are the best in the league, in my opinion. I do think their logo is awesome, and I think their color scheme is cool. I don't think Vancouver is as bad as your opinion is, but...
Well, there you go. We're all entitled to our own opinions, even bad ones, like yours. I think a duck would be better. I think that's more fun. Maybe I don't know.
You're becoming like an Anaheim. There are like the Ducks in the NHL. Are you gonna become an Anaheim Ducks fan?
No, no. It's about the whole package. You have to look at it holistically.
Okay, but then why not the Anaheim Ducks? What's wrong about their whole package?
I don't really care about Anaheim. There, I said it.
Okay,
I don't know.
Damn. Okay, Anaheim catching strays.
It's just like, no, I don't know. I just want the Vancouver Ducks.
No, the Golden Knights is such a cool team name. Like, it's super unique. And especially, like, look at it in comparison to what they got in Seattle. The Seattle Torrent?
No, that
what
one
is
was
that?
Unfortunate.
Yeah. And they're just like, oh, like, crap, we don't have a logo. What did the Seattle Kraken do? Oh, it's an S. Okay, we'll do that. Like, it feels like they were kind of lazy with that. But the Golden Knights logo is cool, and it's a cool concept with a cool animal.
Is it really a duck? Like, when did
it is a duck.
When was this said?
That it was a duck?
Yeah.
Like when they announced the logo.
I saw this post that was like breaking down the logo like piece by piece, and it didn't mention the ducks at all.
It didn't. Well, perhaps that's a flop on the part of the social media team.
I'm looking at a photo of the duck now. That is a scary eye.
It is. Yeah. It's the most distinctive part of that duck. And that's why they chose it for the logo.
It doesn't look like it, though.
You can have artistic interpretation. As former arts and culture editor, you should know.
Yeah, sure. Well, anyways.
I don't even think that was your original question, hey?
No, I don't quite know what my original question was, and I've now lost the tab because I was looking at ducks. But back to Ubyssey, back to sports. Back to one-word questions.
Sports? Question mark?
Reporting on sports, especially ones you're not super familiar with, seems hard because, like I was saying, there's so much like terminology that's linked to these sports and that you need to be able to use to write about them effectively. So how do you do that? How do you write that? How do you edit that? How do you balance everything that's happening all at the same time?
It's a lot, and I think that the beat system really helps with that because I don't think you can get good at writing about a sport unless you watch it intensely over and over and over again, because the terminology is one thing, and it's just like kind of this level of like, we talked about this kind of over the summer when we were kind of planning like all in our sections, like, hey, how are we gonna like approach the year? It was like, what are we gonna do in our section meetings? How am I gonna teach how to write about sports? And a lot of it was like, how do you communicate in these like sports is a big like umbrella that there's a bunch of different kind of unique things under that. Each of them is incredibly unique. Just because I know football really well does not know I know volleyball, and I learned that the hard way. They're all very unique. They all have their own terminology. So I do think the biggest thing is, it's not necessarily an expectation, because I think you can come into a sport without knowing it too well and pick it up and learn it and write it. But I think that there should be some level of kind of like, you're invested in it, you're watching it continuously, especially like if you're coming in and like saying, hey, I'm going to be like the hockey beat writer, it will help your writing immensely to go like watch the NHL or on a Thursday night, right? Or whatever it is. Because the only way you can learn that is kind of by building up those skills. So I think a good example of this, and in terms of how you can kind of build that skill, that kind of portfolio, and building in learning how to write about a sport you're maybe not as familiar with. A great example of this is what we did in rugby. So this past end of October, start of November, the national kind of U Sports Women's Rugby Championship was hosted here. And it was something that we thought was kind of very important to cover. Obviously, it's a huge national event that's happening here. We did a similar thing last year with Final 8, which is the basketball one. That one, the side tangent was nuts, because this one was just women's rugby. Final 8 last year was men's and women's basketball. I still don't know how Lauren did that. That was nuts. But what Lauren had us do last year, Lauren, previous sports editor, was we covered literally every single game that happened on campus. So every single game, even if it didn't include Ubyssey. And I was like, that was a cool experience to do as a sports writer. I would want to do something like that again. So we did that for rugby. The issue is that Lauren, again, previous sports editor, she graduated. The issue was that she was the rugby guy, and she left. And then I was here and I was like, fuck, I don't know anything about rugby. This is bad. And then I pulled my section and I was like, who here knows about rugby generally? And I got like one half hand. And so it was like, okay, so this is alarming, is that we have to cover like 12 rugby games across 5 days, and not one of us knows a lick about the sport. So what we then did was you have to kind of get a crash course into it first. So we brought Lauren back. She was very gracious and put together an awesome presentation to teach us about kind of all the terminology and everything. I think we went way over time on what our sports meeting was, but it was so valuable for everybody, including myself. She was very detailed and kind of set out everything that we would need to know, taught us the terminology. And I think that was a big part where it's like, if you don't necessarily know everything going in, it's like speaking to somebody who knows about it and kind of learning more in that way. The biggest thing is just being invested in it and being willing to learn. The other thing that I think helped, and Lauren specifically said this in her presentation, was like, you literally just have to go out and watch it and see how these terms are applied in real life. And I learned this kind of firsthand, where on the day of the quarterfinals, the way it worked out was that a lot of my writers weren't free the day of the quarterfinals because it was a Wednesday and like everybody's got class. So I ended up doing 3 out of those 4 games, and they were back to back to back. And by the end of that day, I felt so much more confident in my ability to write rugby than I did at the start. And I think by the time I wrote my last article, I was like, I feel like very confident that I know this and I'm starting to get invested in this sport. And so I think to kind of loop everything back around, that helps tie in with the beats, where if you're consistently kind of on a sport, especially at the university level where we're kind of starting to pick things up and we're starting to learn it, it's just like that the repetition, that experience is what's key to kind of honing in your style and honing in your knowledge of the sport and the team. So I think that part of it is really important. So it's a difficult thing to do. And it's because, like we talked about with sports and with arts, it's very much like a kind of intense situated knowledge that you need to, there's a lot of, and a lot of that, like for me with football, like it's sometimes hard for me to explain everything about football because I've been doing it for like the better part of like 12, 13 years. But you got to start somewhere with it. And so it's just about getting investment in it, watching as much as you can, continuing to stay on a beat, stay consistent, and then if there are ways you can supplement it outside of that, like if there's a professional league, if there's whatever, continuing to learn about that sport if you're unfamiliar, I think makes a big difference. And I think especially as we get more analytical with it, people can tell, like at least I can tell when it sounds unnatural, or when it sounds like, oh, I don't know if you necessarily know what you're talking about. And I think every single one of my writers that's been writing this year, it's shown marked improvement from the start to the end, and it's just like I can see how much more comfortable they're getting, both in writing about their team and about their sport. So I think that part of it is key to that.
Mm-hmm. Another like art sports connection. I don't know what it's like this year, because I think Julian has like specific people working more on like specific areas within arts, but a lot of the reporters that I worked with, like not to say they weren't good and didn't have insightful things to say, but a lot of people don't really go out and experience things. Like, they think because they watch movies or they listen to music, they can critique it.
Yeah.
But then you go to an event, like, I don't know, you're seeing a play or something, and you don't really have a frame of reference because you don't see other plays that are happening in this area by, like, similar theater companies. So it's kind of hard to actually judge it by the right standards.
Yeah.
And I think being a journalist is sometimes just a good excuse to, like, go out and have fun and see things. And I think people forget about that. But sometimes, like, just doing that on your own time really helps with your work and your reporting.
I think, I'm pretty sure it was you who said it. It was in one of our content meetings or something.
I love to talk in a meeting.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's lots of nuggets of wisdom in there. Crazy.
Well, I don't know about that.
No, it was good. One of the things that I remember you saying was a lot of times people will, like, use really hyperbolic language in describing something. It's like, oh, this is, like, the best thing ever. It's like Julian, I think, took particular offense to the word, like, masterful, where it's like,
it's just an average Thursday.
Yeah, and it's just like people say that because they don't have that frame of reference. Because it's like, it probably is the best thing they've ever seen because they haven't necessarily seen a lot of that thing. And that can't be faulted, right? Like, if you don't have that experience to start with, that's not necessarily your fault. But it's like, okay, how can we work with that? And it's, again, just like getting people more experience and getting them out and doing it again. And that's, again, where the beats help. Because previously when we would have pitch lists, it would be a lot of people coming in for the very first time, writing about a sport that they haven't seen the team, they haven't really watched the sport, and it's like everything is either like the best or the worst. And there's no room for that kind of in the middle analytical nuance to it. So yeah, I think building up that frame of reference is something that I think we've started to really see it pay dividends in the section. And I think that will continue to grow because this was our first term doing it. And I am hopeful that a lot of the writers we have will come back. And it's like, now you're not just saying, I've watched this team the whole season. It's, I know this team throughout the context of multiple years. And that's when you start getting great stuff. Like the guy I referenced earlier, Michael Sean Dugar, who writes for the CX for The Athletic. He's been there for 10 years. So he knows, like, everything. And he'll write these articles that contextualizes and compares and contrasts, like, the Seahawks of the past versus the Seahawks of now. And it's awesome, and it's so interesting. And that's why beat writers, that's why columnists exist, is like you have a certain level of expertise, and that's what you can bring to it. And yeah, that comes from experience, that comes from repetition.
I guess sort of related to education and training, I'm going to take it back to media studies.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Call back.
To 40 minutes ago-ish? I don't know. Being optimistic for breaking our record wise. Yeah. But do you feel like any of the stuff you learn in your journalism classes is stuff you're actually applying here? Is there much of an overlap between the practical doing it and what you've covered in your classes? Or you're making a face.
Probably not.
I imagine it's very news focused.
Yes,
also.
And it's like, I feel like a lot of it is like more conceptual and analytical of news itself, and it wasn't necessarily like, I think that's why the Ubyssey is so great, just in general, is it's a lot more about the practice of it. The journalism classes I took were not necessarily as much about like teaching you how to do that. Like, they're not going to sit you down in Journalism 100 and say like, this is how you conduct an interview, or like, this is how you like they're especially not going to say like, this is how you analyze a sports game. They would be like caught dead doing that. So it wasn't as much about that. And even like a lot of the learning about how to do my job or how to write for the Ubyssey was very much like, especially early on where we didn't have the same kind of level of training that we do now, was very much just learning through doing it. And now hopefully the idea is that it's learning through doing it still, but also learning through like section meetings. Journalism classes, like I enjoy them, and I've really enjoyed the props I've had for both of them, and the projects were fun. But it was very much a lot more like looking at news and like analyzing that from these were like first and second year. So it's a little bit harder to remember, but that's what I do remember. So it's yeah, they weren't as much of a help in that regard. It was very much just kind of like doing it and being with the Ubyssey for so long, it kind of builds up your like, okay, now I can potentially teach people about what this is like, because I have at least the experience to hopefully be able to speak on that with any kind of foundation.
Mm-hmm. Do you find there are any sort of misconceptions people have around sports reporting? Like, one of the things we've talked about in training, or it was in one of the pieces that I thought was like an interesting point, is how the line in sports, especially between reporting and like marketing, is kind of blurry, just because of the whole like sponsorships being deeply embedded in sports in general. So
it's not even as much about like the sponsorship part of it, but it's like the difference between like us and what Ubyssey Athletics does. It's where it's like journalism versus PR. A lot of the times it can be very like, with PR, it's kind of like, you know, sticking to the optimistic side and trying to promote a specific message and wording things in ways where it's like, maybe like, again, I did PR at C-SPAN proud. But when we would work at C-SPAN, it would be like this would be kind of the line. So there are C-SPAN moments, as I'm going to go into a separate tangent. So like with C-SPAN PR in communications, it would be like there are 2 polar icebreakers that are being built for the Canadian government. One of them is built by C-SPAN. One of them is by Davy, who's a bitch ass we hate. Major rivalry come to blows.
Okay.
So what we would say is that C-SPAN is currently building Canada's only is currently the only shipbuilder building a polar icebreaker for Canada. Now, on a kind of understanding level, that isn't true, because Davy, this other company, is also building one. But technically, that is true, because Davy hasn't started building theirs yet. But like, it's just like kind of what they're not lying, but what are you obscuring? And so I think that's the job of PR in kind of general. I think that's a lot of what happens. In sports, it's a lot harder, I think, to do that if you're working in PR, if you're working in comms for like the Thunderbirds. It is very clear when there is like a failure. Like, you can't necessarily like dress it up. Like if Ubyssey loses 6-0, or if the football team, let's say, loses 51-14 to Saskatchewan in September or something like that. Not that happened or anything. You can't necessarily dress that up to say like, oh, like, you know, like this was still a positive. Like, no, it wasn't. You sucked and you lost by 40. So it's not as much about like you can't hide your failures as much. But I think it's in how you talk about it. With that loss, I found it funny because it was like the headline for the Ubyssey Athletics article was like, Ubyssey has a tough loss to Saskatchewan. And I'm like, it's probably like a close game. And then I clicked on the score and it was not. I think it's just about like, I think one of the key indicators of that was there's always an optimistic kind of turn to the article in like a PR context, where it's like, you know, but they was like, this player played okay, or it's like, and they'll get him next time or something like that. And I think in the journalistic sense, like, sometimes that is true, but I think it's about trying to take it from a middle perspective, where it's like, sometimes something just sucks for a team and you just have to, like, that's just what it is, and you just have to say that. And that's kind of more of a judgment call, which is a little bit trickier. But for something like the soccer teams this year, the soccer teams were both, men's and women's, were both incredible. They both had perfect regular seasons, basically. Women's soccer didn't lose at all through the regular season, didn't give up a goal. Men's soccer didn't lose throughout the regular season. They only had 1 draw, 1 tie. But then they go to the playoffs. Women's soccer loses in the finals after having a much more challenging national tournament than anybody thought they would. And men's soccer gets out in the first round, despite being like the best team in the country. And I wrote the article for men's soccer, their first round loss. And it's like, well, what do you say about that? Is there a silver lining to it? I suppose, because like, they have a lot of good players. They had a good season, but at the end of the day, it's like, if I am to present this analytically, it's like, that still, like, I feel like it would be a disservice to sugarcoat that, which I don't remember what the Ubyssey Athletics article was, but it's probably, there's probably some form of doing that, because that is their job, is to present the sports teams in the best possible way. Like, I'm not faulting them for that, but but I don't have that. Our reporters don't have that same attachment to that. There's no, like, we don't have an incentive to say, to like pump the teams up in the best possible way. So the kind of view on it is just like, that's hard for a team. And they're like, you can't get around that. This team should have won the national championship, and they can't place any better than 5th. And it was a close game where somebody came within inches of getting out of their goal multiple times. And it's like, yeah, it's a heartbreaker. Like, there's nothing else you can say about that. And this is probably gonna haunt the players on that team for the rest of their lives. And you kind of can't get around that. I don't even remember what the original question was, but I think that's kind of where the line is between the PR side of it and the what we do here, is the influence that kind of attachment to the team has, where it's like kind of pulling you in an optimistic direction. And it doesn't mean we can't take an optimistic direction at times if there's evidence that kind of validates that. But we're not bound to that. And I think that's kind of where the difference is. And I think that's where previously, when we were just doing recaps and just kind of spitting out what happens, we didn't even have room to showcase why our perspective is different, because we weren't able to say what we thought or what we thought the implications would be down the line. And so we were just kind of in essence doing the same thing as Ubyssey Athletics. And that's something we've talked about in meetings, where it's like, what makes us different? That's what makes us different, is we're because we don't have that attachment, we're able to kind of provide that analysis. And I'm hoping that's something that, as we, again, continue to build up our beats, continue to build up our expertise, that's something that can become even more prominent and get even better as people get that knowledge that they need to kind of ground those opinions.
Mm-hmm. You can flop. You just gotta be honest about it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I think it's really interesting how your reporters are able to do that, and how you're sort of able to balance, like, oh, this is our institution's team and we're gonna be patriotic about it, but also, like, you kind of just have to look at it how it is.
It's so hard. It's so hard to do, specifically as student journalists who attend the school of the team that we're covering, where it's, I think Julian, arts and culture editor of Fame, he left a comment on one of the articles. It was like, do we write from the perspective of Ubyssey's team? And I think he probably was just curious. And then I ended up leaving like a 500-word comment in response, because I was like, yes, this is something that is important.
And he has never copy edited since.
It's true. He's like, fuck, I'm not copy editing for that guy again. Jeez. No, but it's a very pertinent question, because the kind of objective you think behind journalism is to avoid like bias and trying to not let that, but I think there's inherent kind of a T-Birds kind of bias and T-Birds kind of focus. Like, we're not covering the Saskatchewan Huskies to the same level that we're covering the T-Birds inherently. We cover just T-Birds unless it's like a national championship happening here. We watch the T-Birds again and again and again. That's the team we're covering. So there's an inherent kind of slant. There's an inherent kind of bias there. Added on top of it the fact that we attend the school, and like, in your spare time, if you weren't doing this, what team would you probably be cheering for? Ubyssey, right? But I do think there's a separation between that kind of attachment to the team and being paid to write for the team, to like specifically look to elevate them. And it's a very nuanced kind of in between that we have to live in. And that can be hard. It's not a challenge that other beat writers would have, because it's like, well, again, to use the example, like Michael Shaw Dugara writing for the Seahawks, like, I don't know, is he a Seahawks fan? Who knows? Like, that's not as inherent in his job description as it is for us as UBC students, even though he has Seahawks bias and that he only covers that team. So that part is hard for us, and that's kind of something that I think can it's something we've talked about a lot in terms of like, where do we come at it from a standpoint perspective. But I think it's just about living in that nuanced realm where it's like, we can acknowledge that we focus on the T-Birds and that we have a T-Birds bias in that specific sense. But it's not to the point where we're going to shroud mistakes or we're going to misrepresent things. Like, I think that's where the key is.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another connection between arts and sports yet again, because when I cover like a production or a concert or an exhibit or whatever, especially like a UBC one, I'm not entering it with the desire to have a bad time. Yeah. Like, I'm rooting for performers, honestly. Yeah. Like, it's especially since we do try to cover people who get less coverage. But, like, if I see it and something is not up to par with the standard that it should be at, I mean, considering, like, how much various companies have in resources, like, I'm not going to measure a student production to the same standards as, like, outside of school production. But, like, just because you say something negative doesn't mean you have this, like, disdain for the thing as a whole. Yeah. So I think that's something that people don't seem to understand when you're reading, like, a negative review or something. Like, I don't hate them. Like, if you're not being offensive or anything, like, I have no reason to dislike you and the art that you're making. But...
Absolutely. That is totally a connection between arts and sports. I was listening to, again, another podcast. Don't listen to other podcasts, just this one. But I was listening to another podcast. There's this...
Infamously your number 3 choice of podcast.
Wow. Yes, number 3. But I've listened to every episode, so, you know, let's not get, it's not, like, dumb on me too much. But I was listening to another football podcast. I believe, I don't know which one, he's on multiple podcasts, but it was from, a thought from a guy named Connor Orr, who's a senior writer for Sports Illustrated. And he was talking about how he was talking to a player from the New York Giants, of NFL fame. And the player was essentially like, man, like, you guys in the media, like, you hate us and you only want to give us, like, negative opinion, negative attention. And he's like, no, like, that's not the viewpoint I'm taking. If you guys are playing bad, I'm going to say you're playing bad. But I don't have this agenda to come out and say, like, oh, like, I hate this team, they're horrible.
There's nothing to gain from it.
There's nothing to gain from that. And he made the point that was like, when you guys do better, our stuff gets, like, read more too. Like, like, there's no incentive to just trash on somebody because it's like, for whatever reason people might think. It's a huge thing in sports where people are like, oh, the media didn't appreciate us, or the national media doesn't, like, every single time any team wins a championship in any capacity, they will say, nobody in the media believed in us, nobody was talking about us. And it's like, I don't think that's true. Like, you clearly weren't reading what was actually out there. So I think that's another connection in it, is there is some kind of feeling that it's like, if there's something negative being written, it's because there's some sort of an agenda to, like, trash this team or make it seem, but no, that's not what it is at all. It's to the best of our ability giving an honest assessment of what happened on the field. Like, for one last kind of good example of this, UBC's teams, I think even in our coverage we are still very positive towards UBC, because the UBC has awesome, like, teams. Like, they perform exceptionally well at a higher level than most universities across the country. UBC is particularly good in that they're very well rounded in a bunch of different sports. Some other teams like Saskatchewan, whatever, they are, like, very good in football. Like, Saskatchewan made it to the Vanier Cup this year, but there are other teams that's like who knows. UBC is, especially this year, is at the top of nearly every single sport, except football. And that is kind of a thing where I think reading a lot of the UBC athletics coverage, it was a lot of like, oh, like, you know, there's room for improvement, like, we're going to continue to grow. But I think the way that Annalise, who's our senior staff writer with football, kind of attacked it, she did it, I think, in a very in a very good way, in that she acknowledged why the shortcomings were happening for football. So it wasn't necessarily just that, oh, like, the players are bad. It's that it's a lot of younger players in a lot of key spots that are replacing players that were very good last year, and they all kind of left at the same time, and that created a difficulty for it. So she did a very good job, I think, of addressing the nuance behind that. And so, again, it's not just like, oh, she's just saying negative things. She's addressing kind of what's behind that, and she's balancing it out to say, like she's not going to sugarcoat the fact that the team went 3-6, only made it in the playoffs because of a miracle, and then got the crap beat out of them in the first round. Like, she didn't sugarcoat that. But it's also kind of giving her honest assessment on what the team is and what the team needs. And in the kind of article that we talked about at the start with, like, the term recap, like, she like, I think her take on it was, like, is pretty, like, brutally honest about it. But I think that's kind of what the point is. Like, I think her word to describe the season was rough. And it was. You're not going to hear that at Ubyssey Athletics, but it was. But it's not like she's just like, the coach is terrible, the players are terrible. It's like, no, it's rough for a reason, and I have evidence behind that, and here's why. And here are the legitimate reasons why we think we can see improvement. And so I think it's about that. It's kind of providing that balanced, nuanced take on things, but grounding it in your analysis and what you can see. None of it is coming from an outside agenda to trash a team. We have no kind of reason to do that. It's all coming from what we see and the expertise we have behind that, and building that up into a cohesive kind of profile of this team, a cohesive kind of argument behind that. So if the team is doing great, we will say that, and we will say why. If the team is not doing great, we will say that, and we will say why.
Awesome.
They're getting really
really passionate. And while it has been lovely to record this yet again with
what are we at? What are we?
I couldn't.
God
tell
damn!
You. I couldn't tell you. The cameras have only shut off twice, so I
going for 3. Come on.
But I have one more question for you. I'm sure you know what it is.
Fuck. I have had so long to prepare for this question. I have asked this question to you, and have I thought of a response? No.
So if you had to switch lives with a person on editorial, position, person, I don't care, who would you be and why?
Okay. So my previous answer to this question was Aisha, because my rationale was that if I become editor-in-chief for a day, I want to see how much damage I could do. I've thought about it more, and it's like, okay, well, that would be funny, but like, what is my actual answer behind this? I think it's between. Can I give 2 people, or is that a cop-out answer? Okay, sure. Okay.
Who am I to stop you?
Okay, yeah, I can say whatever the hell I want. It's a podcast. I'm just saying stuff. I think that it happens. Okay, I think the first answer I will say would be you. Not just to get back from when you said me on the other episode. Wow, crazy. I do think that I'm thinking of it in terms of like, if sports did not exist, what section would I want to like edit, or what section would I want to write for? I do think features is up there. I love long form writing, and I love awesome. Like we talked about it in the other episode, kind of the inherent kind of value in that, and how different it is from a lot of the other journalism that gets produced, and I think there's something really special in that. And getting to I've been able to write some of those pieces before. I've written a couple of features, but I've never really gotten, other than the couple of sports features that we've done, I haven't really gotten to kind of like dig my teeth into a feature like that. And I think that would be pretty cool. And I also think that you deal with a lot of kind of like various subject material, and it's like really broad, and I think that would be a cool kind of like multi faceted experience. So I think that would, being features editor, taking your job for a day would be a cool experience.
And if there's anything we've learned from podcasting, it's that we're 2 guys with a lot to say.
This is true.
Perhaps too much to say.
This is true. Yeah, I could get to host a podcast again.
You could host the podcast again just for fun.
Whoa, that's wild.
I give you permission.
I can just like come in here whenever I want and just turn the cameras on. Okay. The shadow podcast.
Yeah.
When you come back after Christmas break and there's like 20 new episodes of the Vilest Rag, that's all just me like talking to the camera about nothing.
I do that every single week. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, should I say my second person now? To be extra. I'll say it quick, but I think the other person would be Julian. Just to kind of loop back with the threads that we've talked about before. Like, I do think I'm kind of a culture guy at heart in that regard, where it's like, again, if sports didn't exist, what section would I want to edit for, want to write for? I think culture is a big part of that. I think that, again, the scope of that is really cool. Getting to see all these different shows, performances, whatever is super awesome. And yeah, it's and a lot of stuff Julian's written over the, like, I think God, if he didn't write this is embarrassing, but he did one on like Wreck Beach a little while back that I think was him, and I really remember that article standing out as a really cool one. Like having those kind of experiences, I think would be super cool. And like I think again that connection that we've talked about with art and sports, and a lot of this is the really intense kind of situated knowledge and being able to bring a lot of passion to it, and that as kind of a positive as an advantage into that. Like I feel like that would kind of translate over. If I didn't have my Seahawks to hyperfixate on, I'm sure I could find something else. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time to talk.
No
I really appreciate it.
I love yapping in this chair. This is awesome.
That chair specifically?
Well, I also which chair is better? This chair is good. I think I need to come on the podcast again to give you a determination on which chair is better.
Right. Okay.
It's been too long since I sat in that other chair, so I'm vibing with this chair now. But I think I need another run in the red chair before I can really determine which is better. I think that's a really important question that the viewers are waiting to hear my answer to.
Okay. We'll revisit it in next week.
Let's go.
Maybe.
Am I back?
We'll see. Sure.
the people want more.
Come back. That was Caleb Peterson, the Ubyssey's sports and recreation editor, and you can join me next week to learn about one more member of our editorial board.
Last one,
and then we can finally move on to other things. No, this has been fun. It really has. I love talking to my friends for my job.
It's so cool. No.
And coming up in a few seconds, you can learn about another moment in Ubyssey's history with Quyen Schroeder.
Cast yourselves back to 2010, which is unbelievably 15 years ago. Anyways, Justin McElroy, not that one, we're talking about the CBC guy, was the Ubyssey's coordinating editor. Instagram first launched, and my partner fell off a backyard zipline while in a flamenco dress, split their knee to the bone, and reached in and touched, quote, the inside of my knee where there's a lot of circles stacked up on top of each other. It's quite fascinating. Don't add that. It's like a bunch of orbs, end quote. This was broadly a crazy time in AMS land. For one, everyone in the AMS was way too online. Specifically on Twitter.com, the Everything app. This is foreshadowing. But it was also kind of a great time. There were blogs, like satirical blogs about AMS politics, like AMS Insider. I wish we still had these. This is foreshadowing. But the specific fun time we're going to be talking about today is when the AMS briefly blocked a transfer of money from one of their resource groups, specifically the Social Justice Center, or SJC. Let me walk you through the chain of organizations that this fund was intended to go through. Try to keep up. The AMS was required to fund resource groups because of a referendum passed by the student body in 1996. Specifically, the money goes to the Resource Group Allocation Committee. Then, some of that money is budgeted for the Social Justice Center. And some of that is, in turn, budgeted for the SJC's grant fund. As the purpose of this fund is to give grants, the SJC gave a grant of $700 to Ubyssey Solidarity for Palestinian Human Rights, a student organization on campus. This group, in turn, planned to forward that donation to a Canadian charity named Alternatives. This nonprofit then hoped to fund an aid flotilla, specifically the Canadian Boat for Gaza. This money wouldn't be going directly to the Canadian Boat for Gaza, however, and would instead go to the Turtle Island Humanitarian Aid. Turtle Island Humanitarian Aid would finally purchase the fucking boat, which would then, in turn, take $30,000 of supplies to Gaza. Following student complaints about this grant, the AMS executive froze it. Apparently, the VP Finance, quote, felt uncomfortable signing off on the transaction without it being brought to council, end quote, a position he elaborated on 2 months later, as specifically being about funds going to an external organization. So, the executive decided to freeze the transaction until council had a chance to vote on it. The president, a controversial figure, emphasized that procedurally this was completely fine, and as AMS Council has the ability to review the transaction in code. This strict adherence to code was a little bit rich coming from him, because he was in the midst of a controversy. In fact, numerous. He was literally censored by council for running his mouth about the university's land use plan, because he was going against the already established position of the union. Crazy times. I had said already. After freezing the transaction, the AMS also claimed that the SJC may have broken regulations by not holding an annual general meeting, a claim which was disproven within weeks. The president of the SPHR and members of the SJC went to the office of the AMS president to ask for minutes of the meeting in which it was decided to freeze the grant. They didn't get the minutes, in part because they hadn't been approved yet. However, the students claimed that the president avoided them, faked a phone call, and called security on them. The president claims that students followed him around the office and stopped him from closing doors. Following this interaction, the AMS president tweeted, "Shaken from the physical intimidation by the SPHR president at my office today, had to call security to remove him!" This man, and I do not jest, tweeted about calling security to remove someone from the premises. This is crazy. I can't imagine something like this happening today. Like, sure, sending some Instagram DMs about it, whatever, but on Maine? This is how our union gets itself sued. Needless to say, this $700 grant became a charged topic on campus and even off campus. The previous year's AMS president wrote a column about how the current president was inflaming the conflict. When he was president, the previous president spoke to the United Nations without the approval of council, who then looked into removing him from office, though they ultimately didn't because there weren't provisions in the bylaws allowing them to at that point in time. Now they are, fun fact. In another issue of the Ubyssey, an entire page was filled with letters about the SJC's grant being frozen, including, again, I do not jest, a letter from real-life Noam Chomsky. Yes, that Noam Chomsky, the one who's emailed Epstein. Yes, I lost my mind when I saw he sent a letter to our paper. Crazy times. Surely I will talk about more Noam Chomsky stuff in a later episode. Before the meeting that the AMS was ultimately going to decide whether or not to uphold the freezing of this grant, the AMS sought a legal opinion, which reportedly cost $2,000. You'll note that this is 3 times the proposed transfer. Don't worry, it gets worse. The opinion that they received from legal counsel was leaked by a short-lived blog called Ubyssey Black Box. 12 pages of the 18-page legal opinion were about whether or not the SPHR was a terrorist organization, how Canada designates terrorist organizations, and how individual counselors might get in trouble if they funded a terrorist organization. Fun fact, SPHR was literally not a terrorist organization and still remains literally not a terrorist organization to this day. With that legal opinion, the AMS called the meeting of council, to which around 200 students attended. AMS Insider, another AMS blog, literally published a buzzword bingo for what they called Gazapalooza. I really wish Ubyssey Insiders was still around. They would have loved Barry B. At this meeting, presentations were made about how the claim that the SJC didn't hold an AGM were falsified. There were petitions that were presented. The one opposed to the transfer had 236 student signatures and 672 other signatures. And the one in favor had 500, in favor of the transfer, had 547 signatures. The Vice President Finance has what I wrote was, quote, an absolutely banger line that reads, quote, "We sign a lot of checks and try our best not to send them to any terrorist organizations," unquote. Again, literally none of SPHR, Alternatives, Canadian Boat for Gaza, or Turtle Island Humanitarian Aid are terrorist organizations. But eventually, at the end of this long and contentious AMS council meeting, the transaction was approved. This $700 was free to go forth into the chain of organizations to eventually become 0.23% of a boat that would go on to be boarded and seized by Greek forces before being boarded and seized by Israeli forces. A decade later, the Israeli government would settle a case, paying out $185,647 for the seizure of its ship and its cargo. That's all I've got. This has been, they'll never see the classic student piece to AMS to SJC to SPHR to alternatives to Canadian Boat for Gaza to Turtle Island humanitarian aid to 0.23% boat to Palestine Gambit coming since 1918. Is what I would say, except literally the day after the meeting, after which most councillors were glad that it was all settled, the AMS executive launched an investigation to see if the Canadian Boat to Gaza has ties to terrorism. The AMS president also gave an interview to the National Post about the investigation, saying the vice president finance, quote, might call the CSIS, which is the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, quote, or someone to see what their impression is. In point of fact, the vice president finance could call them, but the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, quote, does not publicly disclose specific operational activities, unquote, as a spokesperson told the Ubyssey in 2010. The Canadian Boat to Gaza fired back, accusing the AMS of defamation and asking them to retract the statements associated with terrorism. The AMS president said, nuh-uh. This is crazy. Like, why would you ever do any of this? And also, make a press release about it, especially after your legal counsel was like, there is no evidence that the Canadian Boat to Gaza is linked to terrorism. I'm going to treat you to a nice long quote from Justin McElroy, not the podcaster, the reporter, and the guy who loves a good ranking and loves a good bracket. This is his quote. Quote, if you're the president of a public organization and you think you might be indirectly supporting terrorism, wouldn't you want to downplay the situation to the media or defer comment? Especially given that, for all the things you think a British Columbia student union could be effective in, investigating terrorism links will never, in any conceivable universe, be one of them. Also, why even come close to implying that your fellow councillors, which you oversee, might be inadvertently supporting terrorism? And one would expect that if that did happen, it wouldn't be UBC Student Union finding out first. But don't worry. By the time that all of this resolved over the course of 3 months, the AMS president had already gone through a host of other unrelated controversies, including running campaigns against his own vice presidents in the next AMS election at personal cost of $1,000, and nearly being censured by council a second time. He brought his own personal lawyer to that meeting and threatened to sue the union and the Speaker of Council. But, alas, eventually the SJC's $700 grant went through. It only cost the AMS $13,000 in legal fees. Which means the AMS spent $20 for every $1 they failed to prevent from being spent. Epic stonks moments. This has been, would you believe the president was 31? Since 1918.
In today's episode of the Vilest Rag, you heard from Caleb Peterson, the Ubyssey sports editor, and columnist Quyen Schroeder. The podcast is written and hosted by myself, Elena Massing, the Ubyssey's features editor. This episode was filmed and edited by Tatjana, and the music is by Alicia Chaudhry, and the graphics were designed by Ayla Cilliers. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in 2026.